Good morning, everybody. I am the Cynic. In a previous video, I spoke about sexual selection in the welfare state in passing. This will be its expansion. Before I start this video off, I'd like to preface that this video runs on the fact that it is women whom ultimately determine the traits and behaviors that are acceptable in men in order to copulate and reproduce. As such, it is women whom are the key factor in determining the evolutionary steps that humankind may or may not take. It also goes on the bias that those who earn above the poverty line and reproduce are more moral and intelligent than those who do without the proper means, as the general rule. Thank you. The United States is experiencing a drop in birth rates since the country's drop off into economic decline, some of which refer to it as the Great Recession, due to the housing bubble burst of 2008 and the lack of substantial recovery. Now, conventional wisdom would suggest that during times of economic strife, those of the lowest means of capital support would be the least likely to reproduce. However, the reproduction rate among the lower income earners is the highest in the nation, with 98.3 births per 1,000 women in the $10,000 a year earned and under bracket, followed by 74.4 births per 1,000 women in the $10,000 to $20,000 a year earned bracket. The lowest birth rate belongs to the highest income earners at 54.8 births per 1,000 women at the 75,000 plus income bracket. In short, the poor are breeding more and the rich are breeding less, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. Now, the variables for this are beyond measure. Social pressures for women to attain more money and a higher college degree, thus staving off childbirth, economically sound choices, future site choices, fatherless fears, and so on and so forth. One thing worth mentioning is the economic demographic paradox, where there's a correlation of higher capital and educational means and a loss of fertility. It is hypothesized that the observed trend has come about as a response to increased life expectancy, reduced childhood mortality, improved female literacy and independence, and urbanization that all result from increased GDP per capita. Expansion on this topic will have to wait for another video. Though, one thing is certain. Welfare assistance is exceptional in the United States, especially to the lower economically viable, with WIC, women, infants, and children, serving 8.9 million children in 2012, down, however, from the national high of 9.1 million of 2009, but still a far cry from the levels of 1984, which was at 3.4 million. And don't get too excited. Trends for WIC have shown minor declines followed by spikes in participation on more than one occasion in the past. So, the question is, why? Well, again, conventional wisdom would suggest that due to scarce resources, people would be intelligent and moral to abstain from child rearing until they are economically secure and can support these children. And yet, those with the capital capacity for child rearing abstain, while those who are not are copulating and reproducing. Many would espouse evolutionary psychology to this, stating that more children would equal more assistance in garnering money and resources, as well as a class that lacks the education on sexual consequences, little means of contraceptives versus a high sex drive, and using sex as a means of entertainment. One explanation could be that when the moral decay of society is supported by both social and government forces touting respect for single mothers' choices, lauding the entire lower class as a race-based issue, and capital/food assistance programs, behaviors that would otherwise be considered ethically irresponsible and socially condemned with the consequences to follow, have actually been both tolerated and praised, using guilt and postmodern thought to both justify and inspire the economically unfit. This is socially speaking, of course, as humans have a tendency to breed heavily in situations and climates of stress. This all works on the idea that good genetic production comes from those who are economically well off, which is, of course, a general rule full of exceptions. I reiterate this only to dismiss the flood of comments that I'm sure to get if I fail to do so. Provision and protection have been the long-standing measurements of a man's worthiness in the genetic gene pool. judged off his material wealth, family, and status for his provision, and his size and the shape of his body, aka symmetry, scars, muscles, height, etc., etc., combat capabilities, and defensive occurrences for protection, while women are judged more off of their youth, fertility, hip stomach bust ratio, and beauty. Simultaneously, simulating youth and fertility and beauty, aka healthy appeal, in women isn't difficult, and it's actually quite inexpensive with makeup and cosmetics to simulate the desired looks and health appeals to attract a desirable mate. Though, that which makes a man high status is much more difficult to simulate. Yes, the protection aspect can be achieved by less money-intensive means. The provision aspect, however, relies much more on how much resources he has/can acquire and centers around external interactions with other human beings, whereas the protection aspect can almost be done solely and simulated by a single man on his own time in the gym or training. As such, I personally believe it stands to reason that, in the lower earnings, high provision capabilities fall to the wayside, as female hypergamy fails them in this aspect and places more emphasis on the protection aspect as the fertility of the individual women wanes. Now, this isn't to say that the provision and protection aspects are mutually exclusive. After all, the means of provision can lead to gained ability to protect, and the abilities that assure protection can be used to gain means of provision. Most would equate protection assets like muscles and build with honest work like construction and landscaping, though other acts that include theft and coercion, beating somebody and stealing their belongings, making threats of mafia-style protection violence, and producing cultures of violence and tension to appeal to the others of low provision means in order to cultivate more wealth and pool resources and knowledge to simulate or attain the status of a higher level provider. The downside there is that the aspects of the protector role are far more dangerous and volatile than the provider, exposing males who take the former as their primary directive to more dangerous and unstable situations and cultures, all as well as the respective effects to the individual both in their lives and social and society in general. The appeal of these men is that they provide a higher level of sexual excitement to women in the drama and uncertainty of their lives. Good protectors are more exciting but less stable, while good providers are more stable but less exciting. This would all lead to the conclusion of the alpha fucks beta bucks dichotomy, where perceived alphas provide both excitement and protection, and betas offer provision and stability. This explanation is, as I'm sure people are already pointing out in the comments section, grossly overgeneralizing. The way I'm speaking, it almost sounds as if those whom are muscular and take pride in their athletic abilities are nothing more than aggressive assault junkies, while those whom provide are passive pencil pushers. I want to make it clear that both work in tandem. As I stated before, neither are mutually exclusive, but you'll typically see one aspect outweigh the other in terms of social execution versus legal market participation. It would be rather redundant to say that any legal market jobs or careers didn't have the end result of the provision of resources for labor input, unless some form of blackmail or favors were involved. The social world, however, in general, where individual men and women engage in mating rituals, and thus where the behavior of men in terms of their risk and excitement are revealed and judged. This, my friends, is the current-day lower-class human biology and female-oriented reproduction taken to its ultimate conclusion. As a group becomes more and more economically challenged, so too does the importance of the aspects of the male protector grow over the ability to provide in terms of what women find attractive, due in the most part for their inability to attract a higher level provider. Protectors are much more aggressive and rely heavily on their physical capabilities to carry out their prerogatives, which, with lower economic means, can commonly lead to low-level crimes like theft, breaking and entering, gang activity, and so on and so forth. Women in said lower economy see these men as superior as their means of gain don't rely solely on others, but of their own volition. Due to the welfare state's involvement, the protection aspect of these lower-class men has taken on the front-running in terms of their ultimate prerogative. Seeing as the state has become their provider, they use their abundant social time to build game and physical assets that revolve around low-level competition like physical altercations. Physical altercations, seen as men physically competing against one another, appeals to the primitive and applicable desires of females from the same caste, keeping this lower class of human in a perpetual state of lower-tier sexual selection via genetic and social attraction revolving around primitive desires. So, in terms of attaining a universally acclaimed better world, lower-class protectors offer very little in terms of added moral health. Their bodies, muscles, and genetic makeup are exquisite in terms of humanity's early-day challenges, physical capabilities, labor, and strong survive mentality. However, their mental abilities are within question as a growing trend of these men are growing up without fathers, remain in the lower earning classes, and the women's value in these men only perpetuates their risky behavior, thereby disincentivizing them to attain better means in child rearing. And the statistics for children growing up without fathers and their involvement in crime is all too apparent in the modern world. Is it these men's fault? No. It is the mothers whom choose to mother these men. It is the mothers who had sex, birthed, and kept these men, indifferent to the world that they would grow up in, or inadequately prepared to create the environment necessary for a psychologically healthy adult in the modern world. In short, mix the women who choose mates on their physical attributes instead of their mental and moral attributes, and a culture slash biological urge that encourages these women to have sex with them, bringing children of these men into the world, often without the fathers around, along with the future contributions that said children will go on to sow, and it's an almost objectively unhealthy society that awaits us. Now, what do we make of women in the higher castes? Women whose economic statuses are above that of the lower class? Well, that'll have to wait for another video. Until such time, I am the Cynic, everybody. Have a nice day.